Good afternoon. My name is Professor Lopez, and I'm going to be speaking about how theater relates to an organization and its structure. And there's a bunch of components when it actually comes into that. So we were assigned a play to watch, and it was a Greek mythology play. And so to summarize the idea of what happened when the play was the fact that it was a brother who had a curse, and the curse was supposed to be lifted, and his objective was to steal a statue from basically his old family. And the thing is that he didn't know this was his old family that he was stealing from. The brother and sister, they reunite, and the dad, it's a bunch of crazy stuff. But the thing is that this is very similar to an organization in a way. So there's a difference between theater and theatrical. So theatrical is just more along the lines of just the components, and the theater, I could say, is just the actual theater, the stage where people are, performing and they do their roles. So there was two theorists that basically countered each other, and it was just saying that one of them was like, yes, it's a theater. The other one was like, this is more theatrical. And so honestly, I believe it's more theatrical. And the reason why is because when it comes to the idea that just like organizations, people have roles, people have to play their parts. So for an example, one thing that the book stated was the fact that when you go into, let's say, a bank, right? These people have to be in suits. They have to play their roles. When you go to the hospital, people have to be in their suits. People have to look the role, correct? You're not going to go into a bank and somebody is dressed like they're ready to go to the club or something. It's more along the lines as people play these roles. So about that, one of the components I believe it was speaking on was the fact that there's scripts, correct? There's scripts within an organization. And in these scripts, it was talking about how one part of the scripts include its meetings, correct? So in the meetings, people actually discuss and they bring ideas together and they solve problems together. In the book, I remember it was mentioning a garbage can, correct? So where people build these ideas and they're able to toss them into the garbage can or actually keep them to themselves, right? Another thing that was mentioned was the idea of planning, and planning is obviously very important when it comes to any theater and any organization. So for an example, in an organization, actually let's talk about theater first. It's not, I mean, obviously if it's an impromptu, people are actually just doing it on the top of their head, that's obviously off planning. But overall, it's not like this play that I watched was not planned. It was not like they were just making at the top of their head. They've been practicing this and they've been using this for super long. And actually one thing that I found super strange was that in the book, it was mentioning how they were asking, I believe it was CEOs or something, and they were asking these CEOs, if you can tell me a plan, right? I think it was just talking about plans in general. And they were trying to find something, the CEOs were trying to think of a plan that they had that they can actually tell, because most of them were secrets. And in those secrets, obviously they couldn't really think of something to say. And so they asked him instead, they're like, well, if you told me this, would your enemies benefit off this? And they were just actually, no, they wouldn't. So that's a strange thing. And how I correlated this to a theater is the fact that just like this play that we watched, we can give somebody else the same script. We can give somebody else the same script. And with that same script, they can perform completely different. They can do it their own way. So there was two links that were sent to us. One was a lot different than the other, correct? So that was definitely something that was very important. And also when it comes to just planning in general, it's personally for interactions. It's for interactions, and it's for advertising, correct? So when you interact with each other, you need an excuse to come together. You need to have a reason to come together, and kind of bringing it back from that garbage metaphor, where people are dumping in ideas into that, correct? And then when it comes to advertisements, it's like, because of this plan that you have, you need to be able to advertise this, correct? So this advertising, in a way, it's like you're bringing it to people who want to actually invest into your company or your organization. I apologize. And of course, like, planning has to be evaluated. Planning has to be evaluated. There has to be some form of measurement when it comes to actually going about your plan, right? And I believe that when it comes to evaluating your plan and how successful that actually even goes, just like for plays, I believe their evaluation is the reviews, correct? Or I wouldn't say reviews, but more along the lines of just repetition and practice and practice and practice. And the reason why, is because of the fact that when you evaluate, when you practice, and you keep going over what you have planned, I believe that shows a sense of seriousness. And this is what the author also had to say, is the fact that if you do that, you're pretty serious about what you have to do, or your plan in general, and being able to measure that. And also, evaluated, I don't know, let's talk about planning. I believe it was talking about bargaining. So, oh yes, bargaining. So when it comes to bargaining, I apologize. It was speaking on the fact that when you bargain, or like this is also involved in theater, where bargaining is seen. So bargaining is more along the lines of unions, correct? People gathering together to actually make a difference. And it's funny because the authors, they relate bargaining, or they relate these unions and everything to the opponents. They relate them to the opponents, and how the opponents are basically trying their best to really make something happen in the first place. So like, in the enemies in any play or whatever, they'll do whatever that they can in order to accomplish their goal. And same thing for the unions, where, you know, they will do as much as they can to accomplish their goal. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. So that's definitely that's one thing that is interesting. And then I think the final component when it comes to how theaters actually relate to an organization is the fact that we need a power figure, correct? There's a power figure in every play. And the play in this video, in the play of the Greek mythology that we were able to watch, I believe that, oh man, I do not want to butcher her name, but it was the sister who was this role, right? It was this role. She was the power. She was the one that was talking the most. And just like in an organization, we look at her. We look at her and we look at the CEOs, because in the book, it was mentioning how we want to blame somebody for actions that happen, whether an organization goes bad or an organization does well. We need to have somebody to blame. We need to have somebody to look up to, which is important, which is like definitely important. So in general, that's how I see it as, is that an organization is tied into theater because there's roles, correct? There is planning. You have to plan it. You have to measure that planning. And you also have to identify the power and give somebody or people somebody to rely on within the actual play. Thank you.